All right, cool. So this class will be working with one of the project management tools that we mentioned numerous times. I know we mentioned some of the top ones are Azure DevOps, some Microsoft project management Scrum tool. There's also Raleigh. There's also Slack, but definitely one of the biggest ones is Jira. Jira is an Atlassian tool, spelled Jira. And as mentioned, I just logged into my account. Go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. All right, perfect. All right, so this is my screen, guys and girls. Let's go ahead and go to Jira. Jira has other applications as well. Let me just go back and explain these other ones. Jira is the project management tool that we'll be working on. It's pretty much it's a tool to manage whatever project you're working on. That's the best way to describe it. Confluence is uh, how you know you how your team is able to store documentation similar to like a OneDrive or whatever have you. I mean, it's like OneNote, but you could like, attach files or, if you want to write, it's like artifacts, you archive various documentation. Jira Service Management, never used it. Bitbucket, it's where developers pretty much manage their code. Of course, we're not developers, so we probably won't use that either. And last but not least, status page. I've never used that. Probably will never have to use that. But these are the main two you may have to use, but this is the primary focal point. As mentioned, Confluence is simple as long as you know how to drag and drop documentation or you know how to write in Microsoft Word. It's similar to that. You're just archiving, documenting, whatever is needed. For example, your team working agreement may be there, which is the rules of engagement for your team. You know, anything that the team may feel like is relevant for everyone to know, it's right there. So, just want to give you that insight on that, and let's go ahead and go straight to Jira.
A quick side note, so we are going to show you how to actually start a project in Jira. And typically, if you're coming to a team that's already established, they will already have a board set up in Jira. And more than likely, your organization will have like a overall Jira administrator that sets up the different projects. So you won't necessarily, in most situations, have to go through this process of starting an entire board from scratch. Typically, once you get on the job, the boards will already be established. And once we get to the point where we have a actual sprint, we can show you what you will most likely encounter when you go into Jira into your organizations. But this will just give you a higher level overview in case you do have a brand new team and you are asked to go ahead and start the project in Jira yourself.
Thank you for that, Coach Josh. And yes, what Coach Josh said is definitely on the money. I've never had to start a project from scratch. That is usually some portion of your back end team, your developer. They do that portion. You just need to manage the board. So as I mentioned, Kanban versus Scrum. I'll post an article on this. Like I said, Kanban is pretty much like and this is in my own words, like a little brother to Scrum, but they're really essentially similar. But I'll post something on it, and if anyone has any questions, we can go more into detail.
One of the different traits with Kanban and Scrum is there's no time box with Kanban. So like Kanban pretty much operates on like a push-pull system. So based on your team, you'll know exactly like how many things you can have in progress. So typically in Kanban, you'll have it set up so that there's things that are to do, things that are in progress, things that are done. So you want to have WIP limits, which is work in progress. So based on your team and how they get things done, they will know exactly how many things they can handle at one time max and be still effective. So let's say for your team, it's 5 things that they can have in progress and still be effective. Then once they've hit 5 items that are in progress, they can't add anything else until they move something to done. So that is what they do in Kanban. Like they make sure that they have 5 things. If those 5 things are ready to be worked on, once something gets moved to done, then we can pull something else in and start working on it. And that's just a continuous process. And those Kanban is typically used with like what is it? With errors. So like when you have like different bugs or things come in, then the team that is designated to work on that and they're not actually doing any development, they'll typically work on Kanban and say, hey, you know what, this ticket's very important. Let's go ahead and work on that because we still have 2 other stories we can pull in. Once we get something moved to done, then we can work on some other high priority items.
All right,
Back to you, Coach Britt.
definitely. Cool. So we'll go ahead and just choose the one in the middle, and we'll go ahead and start by, as we talked about numerous times, we'll start by creating our backlog. Our team, for this project right here, what will we be working on? Let's throw out some examples out there. I know last week we worked on kind of we were kind of envisioning ourselves as like the CEO, Adam Silverman, CEO of the NBA. What type of project do we want to work on today? Anybody, just go ahead and shoot something out there.
Since we're all in the coaching, maybe like a own a league or organization that we run ourselves instead of coaching in the league.
No, Coach Britt, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I had to grab something right quick, but cool. Yep, that makes sense. I didn't want to speak for the team, but yeah, I like that approach. And I do apologize. We probably should have named it that right here. Let me see if I can edit the name. Okay. I'm just gonna keep it in my Scrum project. Okay, so we're a coach. What part of the coaching phase are we in? Are we preseason? Are we midway through? Are we in playoffs? Like, let's set let's set the stage.
Preseason.
Okay. So as a let's I know we had like what 2 soccer coaches. Let's pretend like we're a soccer coach. So what are some of the things that we need to get done before the first practice as a little league soccer coach? All right, team. Everybody don't speak at once.
Balls, pause, yeah, goals, maybe jerseys. We have to be responsible for that.
Okay. One more. Cool. Project. You'll understand why I'm doing this right in momentarily. But okay, perfect. So you said the first thing you're saying grab some balls. No, okay. Grab some balls and do what?
Equipment. Sounds like we need equipment.
Okay, it's better. All right, so get equipment. Okay, and we could put in parentheses just to add more detail, or we could actually put it in the actual card when we continue to
Yeah,
build out. We'll
let's
add.
add it in the card.
Okay. Cool. We'll add a description here. As a soccer coach, and that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all saw that example of a card or issue that we posted as a parent in the WhatsApp group. But as a soccer coach, I want to.
Would you mind putting them in different uh lines, please, so that it's easier to write? So as a soccer coach is one line, I
Yeah,
want
cool.
is another line.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to acquire equipment so that I can and I can, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, but why do you need the new equipment? I mean, why do you need the equipment, Andre, or anyone else that's a coach?
What's the benefit of having equipment?
So the players can practice.
Okay, cool.
All right. That looks like a good user story to me. Now, before we move on to the next, let's go ahead and create the acceptance criteria, which will let us know exactly how we know that this story has been completed. So what are the things that we need to do to get new equipment? Or what are the different types of equipment that we need so that we can say that we've accomplished this goal fully?
The soccer balls, the goals, maybe the field where you have to practice. Not
I think
equipment,
these
but
are
a
all
facility
important.
location. Yeah.
So in this description under the user story,
Yeah, I don't see.
he added the description. We're going to add it there. The acceptance criteria is going to go there.
Let me just try to fix it because I don't want to confuse anyone. Okay, let's name the project what it's supposed to be. Okay. Always when you go into settings, you can get some things resolved. It's not issue type, feature. That's probably right here. Configure. Okay, perfect. So we need to add acceptance criteria.
Just write it under the description. And then
Okay.
we just add, typically I just add like a line or two. My team adds a line or two, and then we'll just start writing out our acceptance criteria. In this situation, it sounds like we should use the bullet points as opposed to using the given when then format, since there are several different things that we have to ensure are done before we can accept this story as complete.
once again, team, keep in mind that this will already be configured, so you don't have to do all this usually, unless if you're trying to, be in the back end. With my team, it's called the tool chain team that does all this work. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just want to make sure I just did it. I thought I did. Okay, let me try one last time. If it doesn't work this time, then yeah, I'll do exactly what Coach Josh says. But like I said, I'm trying to do this so I don't confuse nobody. I'm more of a visual learner, and I'm sure others are the same. And we should remember exactly what the acceptance criteria is, team, based upon um, the vocab that we worked on a while ago. So hopefully it's there now. It should be there, acceptance criteria. But let's get back to our project. Okay, preparing for a soccer team. Okay, we'll get back to our backlog. And there it is right there. Perfect. So acceptance criteria, what exactly is the acceptance criteria? Team? Okay.
Can you repeat what you mean by acceptance criteria?
Yeah, so the acceptance criteria is based upon its description. What needs to get done for this to be what 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 actions do we need to get done to assure that this is done? As a soccer coach, I want to acquire equipment so that players can practice. So what do we have to do in order for this objective to be complete?
We have to have a location that has goals, or we have to have portable goals. We need soccer balls for them to kick. If we're doing different drills, we need different types of equipment to help us with those drills. Um, we need a practice plan so we can have
I'll make these
players
bullet
to
points
practice.
so we can check them off as we go through them.
One more time.
If we do it, we gotta make these bullet points so that we can check them off as we complete them. If we make a list, then we might like overlook them.
So
So we could just do it on different lines.
yeah, unfortunately, because I did the short description as opposed to the paragraph, it's only going to go in as a line. So I have to redo
Okay,
it.
no worries. It's all good.
All right.
It's for an example. So we need a soccer field. We need to ensure we have goals. We need soccer balls. We need cones, jerseys.
All right. Anything else, team? We I hope we're getting what acceptance criteria means now. Although we were supposed to go through the vocab. All right. So this card looks like it's fully built out. Just to show you some other things that you can put on here. For example, say if you have, you're the scrum master. So once again, you're the facilitator. So usually you assign. Now, of course, because I'm the only person that's affiliated with this project, it's only my name here. But when you're with the organization, usually other people's names here. So say if Jane is one of your say if Jane's one of your, and we're going back to work like purposes, we're no longer talking about the soccer field. say if Jane is one of your developers and they're responsible for whatever this card entails, then you'll put Jane's name here. And Jane will be responsible for not only moving this card, and I'll show you what that means when we start the sprint, but Jane will also be responsible for getting this card done. She is the assignee. So technically, her role is to, complete the task. So, that's how you build out a card fully. So then, once again, we just continue to read down. If it has some type of parent, it may be an epic or a parent card that's affiliated. That simply means something that this may be dependent on other things. So let me give a great example on that. Say if what you wanted to do was uh, say if you were say one of your visions is you wanted to uh, have something to drink, and this is a very simple example. In order to drink something, you may be dependent on having a cup. So with this scenario, because the cup supersedes, and this is a pretty okay example. It's not the greatest. Coach Josh, if you have something better, please, you have it. But so the cup could be the parent because the cup also could be utilized for other drinking occasions, so on and so forth. While that one drink that you're about to have, it's only going to be used during that one action. But Coach Josh, do you have any other examples from the parent and child links?
Typically, a parent is just like a higher level version of it. So, just thinking about my work examples, like one of my teams works on direct indexing, and that's actually an initiative. And then under direct indexing, we have like a tax overlay, which is one of our epics. And then for the story level, we will say like, hey, you know what? As an advisor, when I do certain things within the tax overlay area space, then I should see certain options appear based on my role. And so basically the parent, it's just breaking stuff down more granularly. So right now we're focusing on preparing for the new soccer season. We want to get equipment for the soccer season. The parent would probably be something like preparation for off-season preparation. And this will be a part of that. And then once we get through off-season preparation, then we would say like maybe the next epic might be something like the preseason, like and actually practice and attending the games during the preseason. But it's just steps to it, and it's just different tiers. And the final and most granular tier is actually the user story. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, then we can revisit other examples.
Thank you for that, Coach Josh. And yeah, so that's just filling out. Of course, if we're not in sprint one, we're in sprint 4, 5, or 6. Of course, different. You'll change the sprint. And we talked about story points. The team should estimate exactly how long. I mean, how many points is required for that card. So, like I said, it's fully building out this card. Just wanted to go through all the tabs. So this is just one. And imagine, as we mentioned, we've already put it in sprint one. Let's put everything in the backlog. And so then from the backlog, we'll move it up until sprint one or sprint two, sprint three, whatever. This could be sprint two, create a sprint three. You get the concept. And as we know, for this cohort example, all of our sprints are 2 weeks. All right. So what else do we need to do to get prepared for the new soccer season?
Review the rules and guidelines of the season. Make sure the players are aware, parents are aware. Um, what else? And when I was saying like the rules, I mean like in-game rules and rules of the league. Like, and then also last minute players signing up for make sure last minute registrations are complete. Sometimes you have lingering players who didn't sign up properly or didn't renew their membership. Making sure parents are aware of certain things so that they're on board. I'm having any preparations or strategies in place for your players, things for them to, I guess, review or research like you give us, things of that nature.
So what I heard, it sounded like there's another story that was just there because as of right now, it doesn't look like we have any players. It looks like we have equipment and we're reviewing the rules of engagement, but it doesn't sound like we have any team yet. I was waiting for someone to say that. So it sounds like another story would be actually get people to sign their children up for the team since this is a new soccer team.
Okay, yeah, I missed that part. That's why we already have the players. So yeah, of course, that's the number one thing.
Okay, so we can finish out this story and then we can go ahead and add another. Coach Britt, did you get those updates?
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. What was the final line? Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
I was saying I did
What
not get
was
the
the
update.
final line that we want to add this or for the rules of engagement? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Are you referring to me or are you talking to each other? I'm a little confused right now.
And we're talking to the group now, so yeah, we're trying to. Coach Britt was saying that he was speaking on mute and he missed the last line that we're going to add for the review the rules of engagement portion. So would you mind repeating that for him, please?
Now I was saying that there's in-game rules and then the rules of the league that you want to review with the players, the parents, make sure that personally that I'm aware of all of them. And then that's when you mentioned that we have to get the team together. So I didn't know if that was the new line or
I think basically the last line is so that we are aware of the rules.
yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah. So like I said, the rules of the in-game rules and then the rules of the league. And then like I said, I also was mentioned that making sure registration is on point in terms of last minute players, but that's when the other coach mentioned that we didn't get the players yet. So that's where I stopped at.
Okay. And that's a great point. Let's go ahead and so we do have different types of cards. We have when you think of this green, this is a story, user story. We have tasks, we have bugs. Bugs is like a defect. So whenever like a code may be missing anything or it just, it may be wonky. Um, when we're working with technology, things can mess up. So it may be a bug. So then last but not least, a spike. And that's why I wanted to add this. So I can, and I believe this was in on the vocab, but we'll give a quick example of that, of spike. A spike is research or some type of a question or discovery that you may have or the team may have. So a spike card for sprint one may be confirm players on the team. Can anybody explain why this is different from a user story and why we categorize this as a spike. All right. So once again, the reason why this is a spike, that's why we call it a spike, and that's why you see it as this spike, is because if we read the line, it says confirmed players on the team. Technically, let's put our feet in the shoes of a soccer coach preparing for a new soccer season. So it's preseason. So this soccer coach, let's think about it. How many players do they have right now? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're audible. I think people are just thinking, or they're still on mute. Maybe they're talking and they're still on mute.
Let's say they got 5 players already.
Okay. Where'd they get the 5 players from?
The kids and students.
One more time.
Their kids and their students.
The kids and their students. So are we saying that this is a soccer team because we're learning everything about this team right now. So are we saying that this is a soccer team from like a elementary school or middle school? Like this is a school soccer team? Is that correct?
Yeah, if it's in a school setting, then yeah, you're asking how would we get the kids to be on the team, or you're saying if it was like a community soccer team, how would we recruit the kids?
Yeah. So my apologies. Let me set the setting. This is a club league.
Okay,
This is a
so
club league. This is a
okay,
new soccer team. This is a new
okay,
soccer season.
all
So
right.
how many kids do they have?
We have none then. If it's a new club league, we have to find the kids on our own.
That's correct. So that's why for this example, we need to do some type of discovery, some type of research, and we need to find kids.
Okay, so so you want to answer how would we get those kids now?
So that's why, like I said, this is considered a spike because
Okay,
as the soccer coach, I need to get out there and we need to find some kids. So that's why,
okay,
like I said, this is a little unique compared to an actual action that we need to do, like getting equipment, reviewing the rules. No, right? On this one right here, we actually need to make some phone calls. We need to go to your local elementary schools. We need
yes,
to, whatever that looks like,
yeah.
we need to hit the ground and we need to find players. So and once again, I apologize if maybe I didn't explain it well, but hopefully you all understand what I'm saying now. But as a soccer coach, I want to find players so I can have a full soccer team or enough players to play, a full roster, a full roster of soccer players. Does everybody understand why this is once again what makes a spike different from a user story?
Yes, because I said in the spike, like I said there's a different level of research that it takes to complete that task versus the user story task.
Of
Am I
course.
correct?
Thank you, yes, sir. And so then let's say the acceptance criteria is um, you know, call or reach out. And when we say reach out, it could be numerous ways you can reach out. Reach out to parents to confirm if their kids can play. And so then let's say have at least 10 players sign up. Okay, so it's two portions to make this acceptance criteria possible. And we're going to definitely bring this into this sprint because we need to get that done ASAP. But then, and when we think about a spike card, once again, you're doing research, you're doing some type of, discovery. Right after that, usually, think of it as think about science back in the day. After you do research and discovery, then you do an action right after. So that's typically the case. Whenever you have a spike card right after, so typically the next sprint 2 or sprint 3, whatever future sprint, there's usually some type of action item that needs to get done based upon confirming the players on the team. So the action item after you, and we don't have, I wrote this wrong. Find players to play on the team. I think that's better because we're discovering. And so then the next card, which is actual action items, is sign up players to be on team. Team, does that make sense? How this sign up players to be on team and find players to play on team are related?
Yes.
Cool. Just want to make sure. And we'll get the description for this as well. Sorry about that, team. Sorry about that. Sorry, coach. All right, and I've been here, Mr. DJ, but Abla and Andre, are you all okay as well? I haven't really been hearing much from you all.
Yes.
Thank you, Nabla. Abla, are you there? Okay. Hopefully she's able
Are there
to.
any questions about anything we've done so far up to this point? Anything that we can clarify?
Okay, we'll add about 2 to 3 more issues. So now you see what we mean when we say create issue. Same thing as creating a card or a story or whatever you want to call it, a task. Any other let's try to come up with 2 to 3 more. Any other actions that we need to do before we start the season? This is preseason. We got our equipment. We're learning about the rules. We're acquiring our players. Anything else we need to do before the season starts?
We gotta have practices to see the talent level, to see what kind of skill we're working with, to try to evaluate whether I have to teach basics or if we just going straight into playbooks and figuring out strategies, because depending on the talent level of the team is going to determine what kind of work we have to do once we get everybody together. So that'll be the next option, to try to figure out who our best players are. If I got to do some more recruiting, but stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe that happens once the season we're kind of engaged because we haven't even received our players yet. So we're about to find our players. So that
I thought you have the players. I thought you were saying. So you're saying that right now we
we're
know what we're trying to do is get the players.
Yeah, exactly. But no, you're thinking future state, which is it's pretty good. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. If we were thinking about like so right now we're preparing, and I spelled prepare wrong, I apologize. Preparing for a new soccer season. That's what we're doing right now. We're preparing for the new soccer season. But if we were in season, like technically we started practices, we're we're about to have week 1 in a couple weeks. That's when what you're referring to, kind of you remember. I don't know if you remember, Mr. DJ, similar to like when we broke down the NBA season. It was okay. This is off season. So when we're doing off season stuff, we're not doing the same thing that we're doing in season. You know, it's two different projects, even though they're all underneath the same umbrella. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit of where we're at right now?
This
you're
is
saying
our shoes, our feet are right now literally. This is a new soccer team. This is a new
okay.
soccer season.
Got that far.
We don't have anything. We're literally starting from scratch.
Got that far.
Like I said, we just found out that we're in sprint 1, so we're trying to find players to play on the team. We're gathering equipment. We could bring this in this sprint. We're trying to read the rules because the rules may have just came out from the league. We're still
Okay.
in sprint 1. So what else do we have to do in sprint 1? Sprint 2 that's when we sign up players. Sprint 3 may be what you just mentioned.
Okay. So we're in sprint 2 right now.
No, we're still at sprint 1. So anything
Sprint
else we
1.
can do is
Okay.
sprint 1. What I'm thinking potentially, and like I said, anybody else could chime in, but I'm thinking something else that we need to do as a soccer coach to get prepared for the season is
I feel like if I find a schedule where I can go and recruit players.
okay, cool.
So I'm thinking like, depending on what your area expertise in, like us as teachers, just right in the school, we can, go to, me personally, I like to go to recesses and go to gym classes, try to see who are natural talents and talk to kids. And then also go to different community centers where like there's a soccer field, try to see if there's any players. So basically recruiting, and I'm trying to think of what else. I guess trying to scout and figure out how past leagues have went, who won, doing research about other teams.
I like that.
Trying to, stuff like that.
I like that. So that's another issue. That's a completely new issue as a whole. The one that you just mentioned, that I put that under find players to play on team, which is recruit at gym. I mean, gym class, local leagues, so on and so forth. But an actual, another card, maybe what you just mentioned, which is, research. So if we're doing research, once again, that's a spike. So research and do film study. They may have film. I know in the league I'm coaching in, we have a partnership with Baller TV. So, players are able to watch their film in second grade. It's phenomenal nowadays. But do research and film study on the teams in our league to prepare for a season or game plan or whatever that is, game plan or season game plan. Let's say that. Yep. Season game plan. Okay. All right, somebody help me out with this. I know I've been writing the description this whole time, but can somebody just take a crack at it?
As a soccer coach, will acquire film.
I want to
I want to research and acquire any possible film or footage of prior seasons, past seasons, and other players to learn strategies.
Previous seasons, yep. Previous seasons. So that I can.
So that I can
Okay. Why are you
um
acquiring the film?
to learn different strategies, be aware of um tendencies and patterns within the league, whether it be as to rules or how referees referee the league, stuff of that nature, skill level of players. I have a question. When it comes to these descriptions that's being made, the objective is to kind of simplify it as much as possible so that it's clear and not too long, or is it like a short and sweet thing, or it doesn't matter? It depends on what you're working on.
Great question. Yeah.
It's supposed
So
to be clear.
what?
Oh, I'll take this one, please. Yeah, it's supposed to be clear, but not be so detailed where there's no questions asked. So we want
Okay.
it to be understood by anyone who picks it up and looks at it, but it
Okay.
should invoke conversation amongst the team about exactly what is expected and help them to figure out how they're going to achieve their goal. Great
Okay.
question.
Okay. So that explains that, like, I want to so that I can. That's why that part is so crucial, right? So that can be very basic.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect team. Any other cards? And if not, we'll start our sprint.
I believe that's pretty much it.
Coach Sprint, we can't start our sprint yet. I think we should go ahead and jump to our break. And then afterwards, we need to come back, revisit, and we need to estimate our stories as a team before we start our sprint.
Okay.
Before we
And
start a sprint, all stories in a sprint need to be estimated.
when you say
That way we can.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going to
No,
ask a
sir.
question, but you're probably going to answer it anyway, so I'll let you finish.
Yep. So we're going to go over Fibonacci sequence, and then we're going to talk about the different estimates. And then we're going to look at each story, and we're going to give it an estimate. We're going to come to a consensus as a team about our estimate, and that is the story point that we're going to allocate to it. But what was your question?
No,
I'm not
you
sure
pretty
if I
much
just answered.
answered it. No, you pretty yeah, because basically you're saying that I was going to ask you how you determine the length of each item, but you said we'll come to agreement. We'll say normally it takes this long, or it should take this. And then you try to figure out with each person that what's your capacity to be able to do this task in this period of time. And a person might say, I need 2 weeks, or I need a month, or maybe based on the whole sprint and based on our end goal, try to figure out how it makes sense so that we can get on to the next task, right?
Yeah, and so actually, as we go through these things, we may figure out that some of these things may not be able to be done within 2 weeks, and so maybe we need to break it down. So, like
Okay.
looking at research and doing film study on teams in our league to prepare for our season game plan. If we say, hey, you know what, yeah, this is probably going to take like a month. Like, I need to go get the film. I need to actually figure out when I can sit down and break it down. I want to break down defense, offense. I want to break down various goalkeeping, all of that stuff. So once we go through these things and we get a common understanding of what is expected from each story and we start to estimate them, then we might see like, hey, you know what, this is too big. We need to break this item down. So there is still discussion for us to be had here around that. But that was another good question.
Copy. Makes sense.
Okay, cool. So, do we want to add any other stories, Coach Britt, before we take a break and then come back and start the estimation portion, or do you think this will be sufficient to get us to where we want to be?
Good.
Okay, cool. So it is 10:09 right now, 15 minutes. So let's just come back at 10:25. See you soon, everyone. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is 10:25. Is everyone back? Can I get a reaction to let me know that you're here? Thumbs up, come off mute unquickly, whatever that may look like.
I'm back.
I'm here.
All right. Thank you. Cool. Abel's here.
You'll be here.
All right, cool. Let's keep this moving. Coach Britt, can you make me the host really quick?
You want to just take over
Or I
my
can post
screen,
it.
or you want me to just
Or you
make
know
it?
what? No, I'll go ahead and just post it in the chat and I'll describe it from here. Can you go to this website really quick? I'll just post it in the chat. Can you go to the picture and then enlarge it? Thank you. Perfect. All right, so this is Fibonacci series. These are the first digits in the Fibonacci series. It goes actually a long ways beyond this, but this is what we use to estimate in Agile Scrum. So if you see the first two numbers, add the first two numbers add up to the next number, and then it just keeps going. So 0 plus 1 is 1. That's why you have two ones there. 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on. So typically we use, it depends on the organization. Some use zeros, some start with 1, but 0 or 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. If you have something that's an 8, and the organizations I've worked in, typically you want to try and break it down. If you can't, that is typically the largest story that you will have in a sprint. If something is estimated as a 13, and the organizations I've worked in, we've considered that as something that's too large to be in the sprint, and possibly might even look into creating a epic for that. But most estimates are within the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8 range. Um, as you can see, you can't just go up to the next number in some situations. So it takes a little bit of discussion when you want to determine if something's a 3 or 5 or a 5 or an 8. With lower level estimates or whatever, typically it's easier for people to hash it out, but it seems like not having the 4, the 6, and the 7 option leads to further discussion. So just be mindful that these are our options as we estimate going forward. Coach Britt, you can go ahead and jump back to our Jira instance. So when you go into the board or whatever, you'll notice when we estimate that there is no option for 4, for 6, or for 7. So let's go ahead. Typically, spikes, I don't think they're typically estimated. I know they aren't with my teams, because they are applied to the effort that is allocated to the story that it's a part of. So finding players to play on the team, we would typically estimate along with signing players up to the team, because without finding players for the team, we don't really have a way to sign them up. So hopefully that makes sense as why they're considered together. So we're only going to estimate in this scenario our stories. So we can start with Scrum 1, which is get the equipment for the new season. Okay, so as a soccer coach, I want to acquire equipment so that players can practice, and the equipment is a soccer field, the soccer balls, the goals, the practice plan, the cones, and the jerseys. So what estimate do we think we can give for finding all of these resources? And I think that there are probably going to be some questions that come about for us to find our estimate, but I'd like to see what that discussion looks like. And we need group participation for this one. So you guys have to discuss amongst yourselves and come to a consensus among the three of you what the estimate is going to be. And if you think whatever your estimate is and someone disagrees or whatever, talk it out and say, hey, you know what, this is why I gave it mine. And maybe you guys can come to a consensus that way.
Yeah, I'll say probably like about 2 weeks, because once you get the items and all that for shipping, and I feel like with Amazon, I'm saying everything can be next day. So well, you said mainly equipment, and what else you said? Let's see.
equipment,
Coach Britt, can you go
and
back up to the acceptance criteria so we can see everything we need? And so, all right, so another key component of estimating the way that we do is that we don't want to focus on time because people are notoriously bad at estimating time. So we
okay.
estimate based on three things. We estimate based on risk and uncertainty. So by us undergoing this, how much risk or uncertainty do we think that there is involved? Complexity. So how complicated is this task? And effort. So those are the three things that we want to consider as we give our estimates. Not so much.
So you said risk, complexity, okay. And what was the other thing you said? You said risk, complexity, and effort. Okay.
Yes,
Um.
sir.
So the list. You said the list is where I can't see the list.
It's to the right where it says acceptance criteria. So we need to acquire a soccer field, soccer
Okay.
balls, goals, practice plan, cones, and jerseys.
Um. So when we figure out the timeline, you said don't use time, and basically we're ordering it and based on what can be done the fastest, and then trying to go to the most complicated ones. Or like, can you explain that part? You said don't use
So
time,
this
so
is
that's the part.
so this the how you guys implement it. That is a team decision. The
Okay.
only requirement you've been given has been to get equipment for the new season and the equipment to get. Everything else and how you implement it and actually get it done, that's up to the development team.
Okay.
So that's where you guys have your discussion and say, hey, you know what? Do we think that we need to go about getting the soccer field first? Or do we think that the longest item is the first thing we should work on? So that is all up to the team.
I would say so. Coach Dre, you there? Habla.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like soccer field. You know, trying to find a gym or location is usually probably the hardest thing. I feel like getting the balls, the goals, and practice plan and cones and jerseys. That's all just like effort, and I would say that's like a lower level thing that can be easily done based on just us having an effort and a strategy. But the main thing is soccer field, and once we get the soccer field, then we could determine the practice plan because you know most fields are first come first serve, or you rent it based on a time slot. So I would say soccer field and then practice plan are two things. Would you agree?
100%.
I'm not sure if Abla's there.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Just as a soccer coach, that kind of makes sense for the startup. That once you
Yeah.
get the field, you can be able to. We also have somebody working on the registration to get the parents to sign up their kids. That'll be like the background work, pretty much. That could be something that can also be in the the product backlog that we can do in a different sprint, even before we start ordering the jerseys and stuff like that.
Okay. So I have a question. So you mentioned the registration, and I know Coach Britt earlier mentioned that you don't want to get to the next task. So because I know Abla, you're already more experienced. So if you could explain to me, um, do we wait for that or do we make sure? I know Coach Britt earlier. That's the part I'm a little confused about. Like right now, we just focused on what's on this acceptance criteria, or do we also have to have in mind the next sprints or the other levels of things we have to do?
Another good question. So right now we're focusing on this specific story and estimating this one. But if this conversation leads to something that we know also should be in a backlog, then we can add that to the backlog as well. So sign up players to be on the team. Is that a part of the registration process, or is that something that would need to be done as its own story?
I mean, right now, don't we have it as its own section right now?
Right now, in the next sprint, we have sign up players to be on the team. So we haven't started our sprint yet. All of this still is just in planning.
Okay.
So is sign up players to be on the team, is that including registration? If so,
Yeah,
we can
that's
add it to the acceptance criteria.
yeah. If it is, then definitely. I just didn't see it on here. That's why. Cause like I said, I know earlier Coach Britt was trying to be very specific. Like I said, I'm new to this, so I believe you have more experience. So that's what makes the most sense. And yeah, that definitely sign up the kids is number one. But also, like I said, once we get that, practice times and locations are the next thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So we can determine what the priority and when something's going to be taken up in the different sprints. We can do that at any point. But right now, we just want to focus on refinement. So, like, we're looking at get the equipment for the new season. So, Coach Britt, maybe we should open this in a new tab. So that way, it's the only thing visible. So we can focus on the different items. And that way, we don't get confused with what's also going on in the sprints as well.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, in that case, I think we come to consensus that location of the field and the practice times are the highest priority. That's going to take the most work, and trying to coordinate, trying to hear a word back from whatever locations, because sometimes you send emails out and you're at the mercy of whoever owns the fields to figure out what days are available, what the prices are, whatever it may cost, stuff like that. And then around when we get that information, then we can figure out what time slots make the most sense, whether it be twice a week, 3 times a week, once a week. You guys agree with that?
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, and then
I agree as well.
Yeah, and I feel like equipment and all that, I feel like that's like just if we have the right effort, that can all be done within 3 days. I know you said don't put time on it, but I can't help it. I guess 3-4 days, or that's a lower level priority, I guess, in terms of it's easier tasks to be done, not lower priority, but easier tasks to be done.
So looking at this, I have another question. Do we think that the practice plan is actually a part of equipment? Because soccer field, soccer balls, goals, cones, and jerseys sound like equipment, but I'm not sure. I'm just wondering, like,
No,
do
practice plan should be last.
we think that it should go with this? Or do you think that
No,
maybe it should be its own item?
it should be its own item because that's the last thing you're doing. One practice plan you can make easily once you have everything secured.
Yep, I agree 100%.
So we can remove practice plan from the acceptance criteria.
Okay, so when you say practice plan, that's not talking about like what days and how long practice will be, or is that like strategies?
Great question.
It's more of like what you're going to teach the kids each practice, what skills you're going to develop, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, yeah. So in that case, then I definitely agree that could be last. But if it was in the case of practice schedule and time periods and how long it's gonna go, then I feel like only because, like I said, fields and stuff of that nature, it's usually other people using it as well. So you have to pick the
Do
appropriate
we think
time.
that story would still go under equipment, or would that be its own item potentially? Or would it go under one of our other items?
I'm gonna defer to Abla in this situation. I don't know.
I say we put it on its own because that could be like the last thing.
Okay.
So schedule.
Mhm. It can, if you want, you can move it to the one with the what is it like? Once we get the field and stuff, that's like when after the people register, then you can make a
Okay, so
practice plan because like a week or two we're starting practices.
print 2. Okay. So we can do that change once we go back to our backlog. But for this section, we need to figure out what our story point estimate is going to be. So how long do we think it's going to take us to get the soccer field, or not, excuse me, not, my apologies, not how long, how much effort, how much risk and uncertainty, and how complex do we think it's going to be to get a soccer field, the soccer balls, the goals, the cones, and the jerseys? And we want to use a Fibonacci sequence. So 0 will be absolutely no complexity, no risk, no uncertainty. 1 would be slight, 2 would be some, 3 would be, I guess, moderate, and so forth.
The Fibonacci list, this number it goes to,
It starts off with 0,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13.
Okay. So I feel like acquiring a field is, I would say there's risk in it just because a lot of things have changed. I'm sure you all know as coaches that like sometimes things are double booked. Sometimes you might get to a facility and the gates are closed, stuff of that nature. So I feel like that's probably anywhere between a 5 and 8. But I feel like with persistence and consistency, you can always find a solution. So I would say between 5 and 8. Coach Dre, Coach Ablo, would you agree or disagree?
I definitely agree. Between 5 to 8.
Yeah, 7 and 8 sounds about right.
So which one do we think it would most likely be, 5 or
Let's
8?
go with 8, just because like around
Yeah.
this time, spring season start, and if we didn't start ahead of time, then we're definitely gonna take. It's gonna be we're gonna be backed up trying to find a field.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a team has consensus, so we can go ahead with an 8 for this one. Okay, thank you. We can go back to the backlog.
All right, perfect. And one last question, team, before we exit out of this card. Because we chose an 8, does that mean that 8 is the answer across the board? Or say if it's a team that's working on the same project, say if it's another soccer team, soccer coach that's working on the same project, would they have that same number as an 8, or do you think theirs can change?
I feel like I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. That's my question.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like it could change depending on your staff and I guess your networks. Because some coaches probably work at a school where like they have direct access, so it's a lot easier. Or if you may have like 4 coaches or 3 coaches on the team, my soccer teams usually have 2 coaches. So sometimes it makes it like an easier from a standpoint of trying to keep in contact and communication because you kind of want, if it's one coach, you have a lot of things to do, so it's a lot harder if the task is on one person. But then also it depends on your connections. I know between me and Coach Dre, we've worked in many schools. Me personally, I've worked on probably like 40 schools in the last 9 years in different capacities. So I feel like my ability to probably find a gym might be a lot easier than the average coach just because of my connections. But at the same time, depending on what else I'm doing, if I have 2 or 3 people on my staff, then that also might make it a lot easier too, just because we have somebody that can always be on working on a certain task. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thoughts at least.
Agreed. I agree that even with experience, that number could change. Because even for me to look for a field probably wouldn't take me that long just because I coach with DC Scores, with DPR, so I have connections as well. Compared to if this is my first year coaching and I'm fresh in the game, it's gonna take me a lot longer along with my team. So experience does matter and can change that number.
And Andre, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's not a one size fits all. It all depends on circumstances that you have to go through or benefits that you are blessed with. And it all depends from team to team. So it will vary.
All right, perfect. Team, I just wanted to make sure we understood this, but that's 100% true. You all are right. Say if this is a team with our scenario right here, this is a new team, new coach. He may be new to the area, so he has no connections compared to another coach that the team may have been established for 20 years. They may have been the coach for the last couple years, 2-3 years. They already had a soccer a practice field for the last couple years. So it's just a matter of making a quick phone call. They still have the balls from last season. They still have the goals from last season, cones, the jerseys from last season as well. So a team like somebody like that, for a team like that that's already established, instead of this being an 8, this will probably be a 1 or a 2. So seems like you all are getting this. Thank you all for just confirming your knowledge. That was a quick knowledge check.
Thank
And
you
as
for
we
that, Coach Britt. So quickly to chime in on what you're saying before you move on to the next thing. As an organization and as a Scrum Master, or when you're working in your organizations, that is definitely one thing you want to drive home. Another Scrum team might be committing to 50 story points and completing 49 per sprint. Your team is committing to 20 and completing 18 per sprint. Like, you can't compare those metrics because estimates and story points are unique to teams and the situations that they're dealing with. So that is not a measure of one team against another, and so it should never be used as one. And that is sometimes something you might have to reiterate as a Scrum Master. And it's okay to teach your team that it's unique to them and that their estimate is fine. And sometimes you have to help your teams to be comfortable with their owning their estimates. But yes, I totally agree. I'm glad to see that everyone's catching it on. Thanks, Coach Britt.
pleasure, yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and size the next one.
My bad, I got a question real quick.
Sure.
So as a Scrum Master, when I'm going through this, if there's somebody who I feel like can't meet that task criteria, do I have several conversations, or do I try to have them and try to figure out who else could possibly do that task, or do I just fall back and give it time? What would be the
What do you
strategy?
think? What do you think? And we'll answer that after you answer it.
Now I'm thinking that I would have various conversations with that person in terms of try to figure out if they could complete that task, and then try to have a straightforward conversation as much as possible. Try to get them to own up to it, whether they can or cannot, and then if they can't, try to work with them to try to figure out a solution. Maybe bring in somebody else who's part of the team who may have experience in that area, so that we can accomplish the goal in the sprint time.
Okay. So, and what I would say is that's what makes Agile so unique. It's all about self-organization. You're nobody's manager. We're all equal. So if somebody says they can't do anything, and even if you know that they may have the skill set to do it, or you may think they may have the skill set to do it, it's all about self-organization. So you just let them slide. The reason why is because this board, everyone can see managers, leadership, everybody in between. So say if you have a developer by the name of Johnny, and he is your UX UI person, which is user experience, interface person. He's the one that controls the colors of the website, so on and so forth. He could turn, instead of this say if the action item was to turn the background blue, instead of it being white, it'd be blue. And Johnny's the only person that could do this on the team. It's not your job to say, Johnny, why didn't you pick up that card? Johnny, why didn't you become the assignee of it? Why? It's because at the end of the day, you're a facilitator. That's it. You're not this person's boss. Their boss will see that Johnny's not participating. Johnny's dragging his feet, whatever that looks like. But you may not understand that Johnny, he is involved in 3 or 4 other projects that take more of a precedence, more of a priority. And that's why Johnny's taking the background. He's not answering. He's not willing to be assigned to this task at that time. So that's what makes this so dope. It makes it so enjoyable for me, is because I don't have to hold hands. I don't have to force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. The numbers will show. Men line, women line, numbers don't lie. So yeah, like I said, with this, just to answer it and taking a long story short, you take the background. You play it cool. And so then, eventually, if this is something that really needs to get done, hey team, we've been trying to turn this background from white to blue for the last 2-3 sprints, and this card is never getting done. We keep dragging it from sprint 1 to sprint 2 to sprint 3, sprint 4. Then if it does make sense, like I said, if it does make sense, you got to understand your relationships. Then it may be okay. You may alert your leadership, your boss. Hey, just let you know, I'm running into this issue because once again, you're not alone. You're not alone on the island. My boss, I may alert them, and like I said, this is what I would do. And Coach Josh, you could chime in after Abla, Andre, anybody else. But I would, let alert my boss. Hey, boss, I know that we've been trying to change the background on the website from white to blue. Unfortunately, as we know, we only have one UX UI person on the team, Johnny. Johnny has not been trying to take that card. So, just want to understand what should I do? Or I'm thinking I may want to, and I'm the type, not only do I come with a problem, I come with a solution. And I'm going to speak to my boss. Hey, I'm considering having a quick one-on-one with Johnny just to see what's going on with him and his capacity, or if there's somebody else that he feels can take lead on this card to turn his background from white to blue. But what's your thoughts, boss? Because I have a one-on-one with my boss one time a week. So that's a quick check-in, and I let them know what's going on with my projects, kind of similar to like a daily stand-up, but it's a weekly stand-up. What have I been doing last week? If I have any impediments or bottlenecks, anything that's stopping us from accelerating in the project, and what I plan on doing in the future. So, like I said, that's my approach. What I'll do when it comes to, a team member that's not taking a card that it may make sense for them to take advantage of. So once again, that's just how I would approach the situation. But Coach Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
My bad, real quick. No, that makes sense. But what I'm trying to figure out is like it's our role as a scrum master to keep things in place and make sure that we meet certain deadlines. And that's why I was figuring that like I might let it slide because you both of you all mentioned many times that we're no one's boss. So I understand that part, but at what point do I let it slide long enough before the head boss catches it, or before it hits it's close to the deadline? At what point do I start saying something versus letting it slide and letting it show on his own?
You start saying something during that sprint. As we know,
Okay.
all these
Okay.
cards, we're going to be talking
Yeah.
about these cards every day during the daily stand-up. That
Okay.
call, that 15-minute call, we go through it every day. All of the developers will talk about, oh, when it comes to this card, I was able to get this done. I was able to speak to a couple of players from team A, team B. Everybody's going to tell the status of these cards. If a card has not been started, and we'll see the columns of, not started, completed. We'll see that event once we start our sprint in a couple minutes. But if a card has been sitting, that's when you start asking questions. Hey team, we have two, based upon our 2-week sprint, we have 2 days left in our sprint.
Okay.
Team, what do we feel like we're going to meet our commitment and get our cards done, or do we feel like this card will transition over to sprint 2? So we're going to get a status every day on what's going on with any card.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
Before we go and add the story point for this one, we have to add the news stories. So we want to create the practice schedule in Scrum or Sprint 2, please. And then we can add the details later. That's a story. And actually, follow up to the other spike we had is to create the what was it? The game plan? Yep. Yeah, I think it was create the game plan. Yep. Cool. Thank you. Let's go ahead and quickly add the acceptance criteria here. You can edit it right there. You can just, yep. So as a soccer coach, I want to review the latest rules in game and league so that we're aware of the rules. And what is the acceptance criteria? How do we know that we'll have successfully completed this?
I feel like we're gonna be exposing ourselves a little bit, but I guess try to know as many of the rules as possible. The main things I feel like as a coach, you all probably know too that sometimes you find out things in the middle of the season, but the goal is to try to, I guess, get as much information or the most important rules down pat. Like I said, maybe I'm exposing myself, but every sport I've coached, I don't think I've ever known all the exact rules. I kind of knew like the basics and foundations, so I couldn't really tell you what could be the acceptance criteria. I would say make sure I know at least 80% of the in-game rules and the league rules. Now, I was going to say make sure players and parents are aware as well, but would that come after we have the team, or are we at that point yet, or is it just for us to know based on where we're at?
That's a good question. What do we think, team? Do we think we should create another task that doesn't include that and just focus on getting the coach's knowledge ready? Or do we think that that's something that should be included as a part of ensuring that the coach has done the rules of engagement?
Because right now, where we're at right now, we don't have the players yet, right? Or do we already have the players?
This is still in sprint one, so as of right now, when we have this activity plan, we do not have the players as of yet.
Okay, yeah. So right now, just important for me as a coach to know all the rules. Me and my other fellow coaches that may be coaching with me. I would say, yeah, I guess you want to know 100% of the rules for in league and in game rules. I guess based for this task that we're doing, I guess know all the rules front and back before the season starts, so that we're aware and prepared.
Okay.
Coach Abla, Coach Dre, do y'all agree?
Agreed. Sorry, I was on mute. Agreed.
Okay.
I agree as well.
Respect.
Okay. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna post something else, Coach Britt, in the chat really quick. If you wouldn't mind sharing this. So this is how teams that are new to estimating typically estimate, called planning poker. The link I posted is one that is free and easily accessible. It's by Google, so planningpoker.io. Once you have the link, then you'll be there. I'll go ahead and start playing. You can sign in as a guest, add your name. I would ask everyone else to go ahead and add their go ahead and open the link as well from the chat. And so I will configure the settings. So from the board, if you see the second icon, the gear, it allows you to select different techniques. So you can do t-shirt size. Yep. You can do t-shirt sizing. You can do modified Fibonacci sequence, or you can do the regular Fibonacci sequence. And for this one, I'm going to select regular Fibonacci sequence. I think you created a new game, Coach Britt, or a new planning poker. Because I don't see you on the board. Yep. It should be start playing.
I think you just got to share your link with us because what you sent in the chat was just the
Oh,
actual
I just.
website.
Oh, okay, you're right. My apologies. That's on me. You're right. My apologies. Let me go ahead and send the one I'm on right now. Yeah, I haven't used this in a while. My teams at this point, they just have conversations, just talk them out. but this is how we got to the point where we were able just to have discussions openly. Let me know once everyone has signed in. Or actually, I'll be able to see it. So the coffee cup or the tea, that means like you don't really know, and maybe you're just gonna withdraw from estimating for this one. Gray, are you able to access this?
Yeah, I'm AS.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So we can go ahead and estimate for that one story. So the story again, Coach Brett, would you mind reminding us of what the story was? As a soccer coach, I want to review the latest rules in-game and league so that we are aware of the rules. And the acceptance criteria is to fully understand the in-game and league rules prior to the start of the season. So I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to estimate. Can we go back to the planning poker board, please? Thank you. Coach Brent and I are not estimating for this one. So we're going to go ahead and show the cards. So we have a 3 and we have a 5. And so, Dre, you gave a 5. Would you mind giving an explanation for what made you estimate a 5 for this one?
The reason I estimated this as a 5, not knowing how many rules you're gonna need to go over and cover. I'm pretty sure the basics will be the basics, but just in case this league is different from other leagues, or just trying to break down any impediments that we might have to cover. So I just wanted to be on the safe side and go with 5.
Cool, thank you. Coach Shibu, would you mind giving your explanation for your estimate?
Yeah, it's Swahib, but
Oh, my apologies.
nah, you good. No one ever gets it right the first time. But I would say, I was kind of leaning towards 5 because when Coach Dre said it, that's how I was thinking a little bit. But I was kind of also going with the fact that if we already have prior knowledge of the sport, depending on how long we've been playing it, or whether you watch it, it might make it a little bit easier to know the foundational stuff. And then it's like the little rules. That's the ones that I feel like, based off effort, it could be a 3. That was my mindset.
Okay. So we've both given our explanation, or you've both given your explanation for that. So let's go ahead and hide the cards again, and we're gonna go ahead and re-estimate, and let's see if we came to a consensus. I'll wait for Dre to rejoin. Okay, cool. All right, let's show the cards. And now ours have flipped. So we can have a discussion just openly. What
Yeah,
do you think we should do here?
like I was
Because
saying,
DJ, yeah, like not to cut you off, but like you said, like if you watch the game, seen the rules, what you said also said, what you just said makes sense as well. So to me, it would go down.
So let's make sure we have a baseline. Coach Britt, is this scenario where we have an experienced coach already going with this team, or are they new to everything and new to teaching the sport as well?
We can say new. That's cool.
I'm
okay,
sorry,
if
what
it's
was that?
new, he said new.
Okay.
Then if it's new, then I'll have to change to an 8.
No, I agree too.
Yeah, if it's new, like that's way more things you have to understand. And like I said, depending on the person's just athletic background, like even if you coach basketball and football, the idea of soccer is not too foreign. But if you're new to coaching sports in general, then you might be looking at 13 maybe, or even 21, just because it's such a new thing. So that's the only thing I would say is that if I'm completely new to sports in general, I'm just doing it I work at a school, I'm trying to just do something new for community service or something, I don't know, but or another job to make some money, then I'll say it might be 13, 21, because understanding rules in sports is, especially a game like soccer, it can be very vast and deep. You know what I'm saying? So I'll say you're gonna spend a little time learning that. So I'll say 8 to 13 if we're new, completely new. What'd you say, Coach Dre?
I'm agreeing with that. Like I said, like you just said, if you're new to sports in general, this is going to be higher typically. But if you are coming from an athletic background, it shouldn't be too difficult to understand.
Okay, let's say they're new to coaching, but they're athletic and they are a casual fan of soccer.
And I'll say that we can stay in the 8. I'll say 8 because even the rules between pro soccer, high school soccer, middle school soccer, little league soccer can be drastically different from how many kids play, what rules, what's allowed. Like I know in youth soccer, they're not allowed to head the ball sometimes. Sometimes the games are like 4-on-4, 5-on-5. So I would say, but if you're a casual soccer fan, it means you have some rough understanding of the sport. So I'll say 8 because depending on what league and what age you're coaching, there's an extra level of rules that's like, yeah, I didn't know that you couldn't head the ball or they couldn't do this. So I'll say 8.
I
Okay,
agree. I agree.
cool. Pablo? If you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay, maybe she had to step away. All right, cool. So it sounds like we're gonna go with an 8 for this one. So this is exactly like why stories are written this way. Like they drive discussion, and sometimes you realize that some things that are included in the story shouldn't be there and could be its own story, or sometimes, excuse me, things that aren't there should be there. And so that's where all of this is like coming from, and it's intentionally done that way. So we can go to number 4. Looks like we need to create the acceptance criteria here as well.
I would say so. Based on the league, the acceptance criteria would be have X amount of players based on what the requirement. So if it's a 7-on-7 league or 10-on-10 league, I would say we got to have maybe 15 kids or 20 kids. I was 17 kids or 15 kids. That's how we know we have enough kids. And then every kid has filled out registration forms, and parent has paid the amount required for the kid to play.
Okay, sounds like we have 3 things. So the quantity of kids.
Yes.
So we have at least 17 players.
Yeah.
You can put 17 with the quantity, please. Okay. Next we have that those 17 players have registered and
Yes.
completed their paperwork.
And I guess made payments and etc.
Cool. Okay. And so what do we think is going to be our estimate for this? We can go back to planning poker, or we can just have a discussion.
So you say estimate, you mean like an actual time period, right?
No, sir. Same. So the Fibonacci sequence again.
Okay,
So
so
what do we think this is going to be? A 1, a 2, 3, 5, 8?
I would say, Coach Dre, I feel like Coach Abla, I feel like a 3, and then once again, maybe a 5, but it depends on how many people you have that helping you. So if you have 2 coaches, that means you can do the double amount of calls and reminders to parents. To also players, it's easier to communicate with players and parents when you have the information. If you have more than one person who are doing the check-ins to make sure forms are filled and delivered. So I would say really a 3 to 5, depending on your effort level and amount of people you have with you, and sometimes I guess time that you have. What do you think, Coach Jerry? Because I know like working in the school system, sometimes you give out forms at the beginning of the year, and it takes almost some kids. It takes them a month sometimes to get the stuff done. Their parents sometimes are so busy they don't have time. So, but I also found that if you just damn near harassing the parents every second and keep reminding the players, then it can be done a little faster. So, and if you have more than one person doing it, it'll also be faster. But you're still at the mercy of the parent.
For this scenario, we'll say that there are 2 assistants with the coach. So there's 3 people in total.
Okay. So I would say a 3 then. What you think, Coach?
Yeah, I say 3, no higher than a 5.
Yeah. But if we got 3 coaches, and I feel like, yeah, we could definitely make that work. Either 2 or it's just based on the season, and because we also have to be mindful of how close we are to the season, trying to see the skill level of the players. So we can't really afford to let it linger too long. So I feel like with effort and persistence, that's part of this process, right? It's effort level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel
Yes,
like
sir.
if we just show great effort level and make it high priority, and if we have 3 people as well, that means we don't also. I know I'm sure you all have been in situations where you've been the only coach or only teacher, and the work level is way higher versus if you have 2 or 3 people. And if you have 2 or 3 people who are on the same page, who have the same effort level, then it could be sometimes even maybe a 2. You know what I'm saying? But I'll say 3 maximum if I have 2 other assistant coaches, because these days that's even rare. Sometimes you get 2 coaches. So I feel like if I have 2 coaches and with me as well, I'll say nothing higher than a 3.
I agree.
Abla, do you agree or have anything different? She may not be able to speak at this time. Okay, we're going to go with a 3.
All right, team. So we went through 3 different scenarios. I hope this is kind of making sense now. Oh wow, it did not fully
Did you
hit.
refresh the page, maybe? Oh, no, it's not there.
Yeah, it's cool. No problem. At the end of the day, team, I hope we are all understanding what's going on with this scenario. We do have about 15 minutes before we want to go to the parking lot. So we do want to at least start the sprint. And I do want to add one other thing before we leave from this part of the exercise. Team, whenever once you start interviewing a recruiter or a manager may ask, how many story points does your team typically take in during a sprint? For a question like that, you want to have a good answer. And usually, typically, a good answer is depending on how big your team is. Say if your team consists of 6 people, 7, let's just say 7 people for this sake example. One person is you as the scrum master. You have a product owner, so that's 2 people. You have, let's say you have 4 developers. So that's now you're up to, my apologies, you may have 3 developers. So now that's 5 people, and you may have 2 QA people. Those are the QA testers, quality assurance testers. So that's 7 people total. From the 7 people, of course, you as the Scrum Master, you're not usually typically you don't have any cards, any issues for yourself. So no cards for yourself. Product owner the same, typically, unless if they are acting as a developer. They like a so have a hybrid type of role, but typically your product owner doesn't because they have other obligations. So usually 0 for your product owner as well as far as cards are concerned. And so then when it comes to your QA and your developers, they may have a capacity of anywhere between 8 and 13 points, aka story points. So if they have, and let's just say for this example, Snake, they're doing 8 per sprint. So easy math. 8 times 5. So you'll say that our team typically brings in about 40 story points per sprint. The reason why this is important to understand is because that's why we did this scenario. That's why we did these examples. If you have, we'll go back to our example, Danny. Danny has a capacity of 8. And if Danny has this card for this sprint, he's at capacity. He's hit his 8 for this sprint. So that means another developer has to take on this responsibility, and so on and so forth. Let's say if this was only a 3, that means he has the capacity of 5 more points. So it could either be a 5-point card, or 2 2-point cards, or one 2-point, one 1-point, one 3-point. You get I hope you get the scenarios. But long story short, you want to understand based upon what's going on in your teams, how many points your team can digest in one sprint. And Coach Josh, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so for me in that situation, honestly, I would stay probably away from the numbers, and I would just say we base it off of our team velocity. And I would go into like, hey, you know what, we look at velocity based on the past 3 sprints or past 5 sprints, and that is what we use to determine how we're going to pull in stories. And we try to keep our velocity pretty consistent, but we do know that things happen, especially working with cross short teams. We have various holidays. Um, that it is, it really depends on the sprint that we're going into, but everything is based on empiricism and based on our previous metrics. And so, honestly, you can just say something like that, and I think that that would be pretty sufficient, and you wouldn't have to get too granular into the details, because at the same time, it's like, hey, you know what? The way we estimate is unique. And so 40 story points for us might be 20 story points for another team. So I just stay away from that personally and just say we do it based on historical data.
Okay. I love that example as well. Um, yeah, I like that example as well. At the end of the day, I think what's most important, team, is you all to understand that you have to know your story. You got to know what's going on. And just to add on to kind of infuse both of what Coach Josh and I are saying, say if your team's velocity is, and we'll just keep it simple, say if your team's velocity for the last 3 sprints was a 40, 45, and potentially a 50. At the end of the day, just doing quick math, 40 plus 45 plus 50 divided by 3, your team's velocity will be 45 points, approximately. So like I said, just understanding your story, understanding what your team is doing, and that'll really just kind of drive the point home of, okay, this is how we're using empiricism to come up with future stats. All right. Now we'll go ahead and start the sprint so we can go through this scenario. As you see, you're already populated for 2 weeks. Usually 2 weeks is the standard, but some teams go 1 week, some teams go 3 weeks, 4 weeks. 4 weeks is typically the max, but then, hey, we even have a custom field. So it starts today, 24th, and it ends on the 7th. And typically you have a sprint goal. The sprint goal is the overarching goal for this sprint 1. So team, do we have a sprint goal? Based upon finding players to play, get equipment, read the rules, research and do film studies. If you could equate that to one big goal, what is the goal?
Guess would it be like a preseason overview?
Okay. All right, perfect. We're good to go. Now the sprint has started. Typically, as you see, you could add other columns if you feel like the team may need another column. One other column that my team usually has is a block as well. So say if you're starting with a task and the task it has some type of blocker for some reason. Whether let's say you're starting a task, acquire new equipment, but then it's blocked because I know Mr. DJ, he mentioned something to the fact of he's using Amazon to get his soccer balls. See if Amazon has some type of, they're sold out, or they have a back order on soccer balls because technically this is the beginning of the season. So everybody's sorting after the same thing. Sorry about that. That card may go from in progress because you ordered it to, unfortunately, you can't move it to done because you didn't get your balls yet. You have to move it to block because Amazon sent you a message stating that the balls will not be able to get to you until 3 weeks from now. Essentially, it's outside of sprint 1, potentially sprint 2. That's what you may use that block column for. Like I said, I just wanted to give that scenario. But say we're going through the sprint, as soon as we start looking for team play, as soon as we make that first call, or as soon as we go to this first gym practice, that's when this card is in progress. Say we start reading the rules. We're on page 2 out of page 100. As long as you started, this card is started as well. Say if you want to do film study, but you still haven't been able to acquire that film, this is still to do. Say if this is the next day, we're moving throughout the weeks. You finally got your team, your players on your team. So whoever was responsible for this card, say if Suzy was responsible for this card, she'll either move it to done herself or during the daily stand-up. Usually these cards you have a progress report on these cards, either doing a daily stand-up or somebody may ping you off an individual basis. But what you should not do is assume that, oh, okay, because assistant coach Tim, he told me that he was going to start ordering equipment. You as a scrum master, you don't go and say, okay, I'm just going to move this card because I think Coach Tim said he's thinking about doing it. No. Once again, it's all about self-organizing. So you either wait for Tim to move this car himself or doing your daily stand-up the next day. Hey, Tim, I know you mentioned that you were moving forward with acquiring the equipment. Have you been able to start that task yet? You ask that question in daily stand-up. It's all about transparency. He may say, no, unfortunately, coach, haven't been able to do it yet. I've been bombarded with family tasks and work and whatever have you. He'll give you some type of reasoning why, rhyme or reason why, and it stays in to do. So the reason why I'm giving you this long story is because I know of a scrum master that she was part of a team and she started getting bored because I guess the cards weren't moving fast enough for her. So she started just moving cards based upon assumptions. That's the easiest way for you to get fired. Just letting you know.
So in that scenario, we're just watching it, and I know Coach Josh said earlier that like we don't put timelines on it, but we already know that this is a 2-week period, right? That way we got to get this task done. So you're saying basically we just have to make sure that this is part of our job to just keep monitoring this list, and then if it's getting close to a certain deadline or when we think in our mind it should be done, then we go have that conversation with the person and ask them how everything is going. And then through that conversation, we can figure out what the real issue is, right?
So once again, it's all about self-organizing. Everybody's different. Say if Coach Tim, even though it may seem easy to you, you're not a developer. Let's go back to if you're on an IT team, you're working on SDLC, software development life cycles. You don't understand. Most of us don't understand Python. Most of us don't understand C++. Most of us don't understand all these coding languages. This is just a simple scenario. So that's why you understand it here. But when you start getting into the weeds of what some of these developers are talking about, it may seem simple to you, but it's not that simple. So you're not, the team understands that this is a 2-week like we have a deadline of 2 weeks. What your goal is as the scrum master is, hey team, our sprint ends on Friday. Just let you know we have 3 days left and we have 50% of our cards still in to do. Let's go ahead and try our best to get all of our cards done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so just have like general conversations based on our observations of what we're saying.
Exactly. It's not
Okay.
time to point Johnny out just because it's 1 day left and he wasn't able to acquire the new equipment for the season. To be honest,
Okay.
once again, we're self-organizing. If he gets the card done, great. If he doesn't get the card done, it's okay too. Why? You're still getting paid. He's still getting paid. And
Sure.
he has to explain himself. You don't have to explain for him. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's why this is so like hands off. If you're used to a job that being hands on, this will be a challenge. Let's be honest, because you have to take a step back as opposed to being in somebody's personal business, personal space. So, everybody's on that daily stand up. You remind them what's going on and you remind them of our time commitment. Hey, team, it's about our 2-week sprint. We have 1 day left. Like I said, 50% of the cards aren't done. Let's try our best to try to get all our cards complete, or if not, try to get them in progress by the end of the sprint. Okay, you just lit a fire over Johnny. Johnny was able to move this to in progress. Granted, we weren't able to get everything done, but, oh yeah, and don't forget, because the teams were doing some research in the back end, this card is in progress as well. At the end of the day, we're incrementally building up. But prior to the beginning of the 2 weeks, all 4 of these tasks were to do. This is progress, believe it or not. 1 card was complete, 2 are in progress. 3 are in progress. This is incrementally building up to getting ready for the new sprint and the new soccer season. So this is a win. As the old adage says, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. You can't eat it all in 1 sitting. So this is progress. Coach Josh, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. Also just something that you can implement with your teams going forward. So my organizations also have typically had a block column, but my current organization realized like block isn't a part of the process. So why move something from where it is to block? So we started implementing removing the block column from boards and instead starting to add a flag. So if you go to any of these cards and you click on the ellipses, you can add a flag and it'll bring up a little orange flag. If you don't mind, could you click on Scrum 2, that card, and I'll show you where it is. Yep. And then add flag right there. And so once you do that, it actually asks you for the reason for the flag. And so you can say, hey, you know what? This is something that I'm blocked on, something I can't make progress with. It gives you a place to add the explanation for what's going on. And so that way, people don't have to have direct conversation. They can look at the board and it can really represent exactly where something is in the process. So that's in progress, but it's blocked there in progress. If you moved it to block, you wouldn't know where it was, if it was in to do, in progress, or what have you. So that has helped my teams, especially like I said, being cross. Sure, we don't always meet face to face or on the calls because of the time differences, but by having good notes under these cards, we can still keep people aware of what's going on here. That's all I had.
All right. Thank you for that. And let's just go ahead and, as we are almost, we need to get into the parking lot. Let's go ahead and close out this sprint just to show you all the scenario on what that looks like. As we see, Jira, it's very user-friendly. It asks us a simple question. Did we want to move the remaining open cards into sprint 2 automatically? We want to start a new sprint, or we want to add it straight to the top of the backlog? What do we want to do right here? No answers. Every answer is a good answer. There's no wrong answer. But what do we want to do in this scenario?
Then move it to the backlog.
Say you want to move it where?
Into the backlog.
Okay, cool. We'll move it to the backlog. And as we see
This
here,
is the way the actual, my apologies, the Scrum guide actually says it's supposed to be done. Anything that's not completed and accepted as complete within a sprint should be moved back to the backlog. And then during sprint planning the following day, the items should be pulled for that sprint based on priority and based on capacity. But what happens in actual practice is typically we see teams roll it over to the next sprint because they say this is the work that was already in progress. So this is the highest priority stuff. Instead of going to the backlog, we'll just roll everything over. And if there's anything else we want to pull into that sprint that we didn't already have planned for that sprint, then we can go to the backlog and do that. And if there's something that we want to swap out, then we can. But the most common practice is teams typically just roll everything over.
and thank you for fully explaining that. Coach Josh, you're 100% right. It's definitely supposed to go straight into the backlog, but most teams are lazy and they know that those cards still need to get done. So usually they just move it straight into sprint 2. But once again, for this scenario, because we know that these need to continue to get done, they're still a top priority. We still need to review the rules of engagement. We'll put it at the top of sprint 2. And once again, we still need to do that, continue that film study that's in progress. Both of these are still in progress. So we'll move them to the top of sprint 2. Last but not least, we can't play soccer without no equipment. So we need to move all these from the backlog until sprint 2. Now, if one of these aren't as much of a priority anymore, guess what? it can either go back into the backlog or we always have sprint 3. So out of all this, anything that we feel like is not as important anymore because we have already a full plate, we can move into sprint 3. All right. If we all feel like all these are important to do this sprint, we'll be pretty much at capacity or maybe a little over. But at the other end of the day, the team will work a little harder this sprint 2. We'll start the sprint. We'll have a sprint goal similar to what we just had with sprint 1. And so then it continues to go. Continuous repetition. You go from just like how we showed you in one of our in the PowerPoint presentation when we first started this class. After sprint 1, you just go straight into sprint 2, you go straight into sprint 3, so on and so forth until the project is fully done, until you're fully done with that preseason. And guess what? You'll start a new project, aka the start of the season. Once the season's done, guess what? You'll go into a new project. That next project is aka the off season. So that is, I know we spent majority of this class talking about Jira, and that's what we wanted to do. But I hope you all understood these examples. Before we stop the recording, does anybody have any questions, or does anybody have anything they want us to show again in Jira before we go into our parking lot?
No, it all makes sense to me. Appreciate the explanations and the patience.
Of course.
Just one quick question. During that whole process, us as Scrum Masters handle that situation, or is that a product owner's responsibility? I know it's probably a repeated question, but just need clarification.
No. Every question is a good question. We are, because you're the Scrum Master, you are in control. Your job is to facilitate board activity. So you're the one that if the board is messed up, you're the one that reaches out to the back end team to, okay, I need you to add a column for block. Okay, I see spikes is not something we can add for our team. We need to add spike to our board. We need to add bug/defect to our board. We need, unfortunately, I'm having issues doing this on our board. Whatever that looks like, your primary responsibility is to be an SME, a subject matter expert on board activity. The product owner, they're supposed to, that's why you all are best friends. The product owner helps you create that long backlog. The product backlog, that huge wish list that we were displaying in Jira, it wasn't huge because we just started talking about our project, and we were playing the roles of 2 roles in this scenario. We were pretty much acting as if we were the product owner and the Scrum Master. But the product owner comes with, okay, everything we need to do. The product owner brings up, okay, we need to sign up players on the team. Okay, we need to schedule practice. Okay, we need to create a game plan based upon the film study. Okay, we need to understand the rules of engagement. Okay, we need to get equipment for the new team. The product owner owns the product, so he or she knows exactly what the product needs. You as the Scrum Master, you are only there to, and it's not only, but you are there to help them gather their thoughts and put them in a concise issue, aka a card, so the team can understand it without much more explanation. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Any other final questions before, like I said, we're gonna stop the recording and go into the off the recording parking lot session. All right. We appreciate you all participating in this class on Jira. Stop the recording now.